I wanted some dust to settle and to get a slight bit of distance before talking about the recent events surrounding PlanetSide 2, PlanetSide Arena, and Daybreak games in general. If you don't already know, there were reports that Daybreak Games laid off an unspecified number of employees a couple of weeks back, many it seems impacting the PlanetSide team, and all this happens after other layoffs last April and December. Following that, Andy Seitz, the executive producer of the current PlanetSide games, took to Twitter and said that the previous week had been a gut punch, that the PlanetSide team is still committed to continuing support and development. We're in the process of regrouping and revising our short and long-term plans. I'm planning to post a more detailed letter in the next day or so, with more details on what the future holds for both PlanetSide 2, PlanetSide Arena, and the PlanetSide franchise overall. Part of me waiting to make this video was to see what that producer's letter actually turned out like. And it isn't the first time we've had one of those, by the way. We've had sort of statement documents from the developers before, but perhaps none that felt so important or as needed as this one. What we got last Friday was a document with arguably a much more upbeat tone. While there may be the sky is falling sort of style chatter on Reddit, this even discusses the future plans for the PlanetSide series. PlanetSide 2 interestingly takes the first main section of the letter. It's short, but it pays homage to PS2 being the main reason for where we all are today. That PlanetSide Arena is now in early access. PlanetSide 2 would benefit from some key reinforcements in the form of several additional programmers, designers, and artists. This is an interesting point and not one that I thought I'd be reading. We'd heard that the PlanetSide team had been impacted by some of the job losses, but now we're talking about strengthening the team. Are we talking about to a higher level than before the losses? I'm not really sure. But it's interesting that one former developer on Reddit commented when asked about brain drain that PS2 has been resource-starved for so long that it might actually gain development power out of all of this. So perhaps things aren't as bare bones as people might have actually been worried about. It's about the will to focus those resources on PlanetSide 2 as much as having those resources actually available. The next section discusses PlanetSide Arena, for some a more controversial topic. We're pushing forward with the intention to treat early access as it should be, a limited phase where we gather feedback and suggestions to help refine the foundational game systems, features, content, and overall stability as quickly as possible. Our goal is to finish implementing the features and content for what we believe are critical, then GTFO of early access as quickly as possible and start promoting the game. And speaking of new features, we are actively working on a new non-BR mode that incorporates many of the gameplay elements that make PlanetSide such an amazing experience, but in the form of shorter session-based matches. It will include a new mode-specific map, capture points, ability to drop in or out throughout the match, a broader range of vehicle types, etc. Many of the mechanics developed for this mode will be used in future modes like Massive Clash, so our focus is function over form, allowing quick iteration with your help. It's clear that player numbers for Arena are not in a good place, and in fact they've taken steps to bring the player base together, regardless of location, to generate more regular matches, but I'm still wrestling over whether purely marketing is the only thing missing for PlanetSide Arena. When it was first discussed, Arena was just that. It was like a container for other game modes where, that was easily possible. There could be a team deathmatch, or capture the flag, or only vehicles, or whatever. To hear them talk about non-BR modes feels like something positive to me. Arena needs not to be another one of those BRs that people just don't talk about anymore. Battle Royale was the hot new thing at one point, but arrived at that party late and people are already bored, and then you get tarred with that same brush. I've heard people complain about the lack of marketing. Mr. Seitz actually commented on a Reddit thread for my Arena review video, and he said that they aren't actively running any traditional marketing campaigns. But with them being in early access, perhaps that's not surprising. But the lack of meaningful numbers of players in the game makes it feel like something needs to happen pretty fast. Early access for PlanetSide Arena sounds like a more traditional prospect, that you can't exactly blame the consumer for presuming that a game is actually out when it's available with the early access tag. After all, if you load up Fortnite, the same words are in the top left of the loading screen, even as the game is seemingly played by everyone under 20 years old and makes about as much money as a small country. The final section of the letter is perhaps the most surprising though. We're coming up on the 7th anniversary of PlanetSide 2. In early 2020, the PlanetSide franchise will celebrate its 17th since the original release back in 2003. Over those 16 plus years, we've amassed millions of passionate fans, so when we think about what the PlanetSide 3 experience needs to be, we know that there are incredibly high expectations from all of you. PlanetSide Arena is intended to be a stepping stone to PlanetSide 3, which we envision from expanding from the current battlefields of Araxis to fully fledged galactic war, with empires exploring, colonizing and conquering one another within an expansive galaxy. We envision PlanetSide Arena as a way to allow us to link present-day PlanetSide 2 and PlanetSide 3 storylines, as well as providing an opportunity to try out new features, styles of play, etc. Why wouldn't we just do this in PlanetSide 2? Quite simply, because PS2 offers a very unique experience that the current active community enjoys. Trying to incorporate the different systems or styles of play, or even trying out new modes would be disruptive, potentially catastrophically. We don't want to upset that balance, as it would be unfair to the current PS2 community. I actually have quite a lot of time for this explanation. PlanetSide 2 is pretty restrictive in the manner that it lets users interact with its gameplay. It's not like, say, a Quake server, where you could have modifiers to try out how things feel in like a different direction, have that open to the general player base, and still leave the current gameplay intact on other servers. There are probably systems on systems, and I can imagine the way that things have been developed might not play well with a more kind of eclectic approach to how those rules are applied. If you accept that idea, then PlanetSide Arena becomes more understandable. Perhaps a full jump to PlanetSide 3 isn't then possible, so the idea of widening potential player base without massively upsetting the status quo, while also not needing to develop a whole new title that you also need to be in a position to make more flexible in a less rigid way, and you've kind of just described PlanetSide Arena. I also think that the idea of adding an arenas section or addition to PlanetSide 2 would have been a non-starter if your goal was to try and widen the PlanetSide player base. It would be like launching PlanetSide 2 DLC and then wondering why so few non-PlanetSide 2 players were interested. You're selling to the same people who are already playing, except you're not selling anything, of course, because these are free-to-play titles. I am surprised, like I said, about the discussion of PlanetSide 3 though. It does seem like a long way off at this point. It's difficult to spot the obvious road between where we are now, evaluating how PlanetSide 2 can get resources after a number of layoffs, to the multi-million-dollar investment required for a whole new title. Maybe something seismic will happen. Perhaps, as did happen with the H1Z1 project, PlanetSide is split into a separate company and sold to another owner who wants that IP and to invest in the concept of an MMO FPS. That does sound like a lot of upheaval, but that would be one way for that investment to be found. Or perhaps both PlanetSide 2 and Arena start to make money and something can happen internally to find that investment, though, like I said, that road doesn't look particularly obvious at the moment. And just to say, I haven't read through the whole producer's letter here, I just picked out sections that I thought were most important, but I'll link it in the description and also encourage you to read it through for yourself as well. So, as a player right now, what do? Well, it's important to say that things aren't dead. PlanetSide 2 is still alive and still delivers that unique blend of all the stuff that you enjoy enough to watch videos about it on YouTube. There's a Halloween event just started, so get out there and buzz some pumpkins. For PlanetSide Arena, the same applies. If you like playing, then continue to do so and provide constructive feedback. What I'd very much encourage you not to do is to prejudge or even go as far as to sort of review bomb Arena. I understand that you might not care for the style. The Arena does indeed play to a completely different direction to the open world PlanetSide 2, but try to evaluate it on its own merits and flaws. I'm not saying don't criticize. For example, I have problems with the way that the game is monetized now, but do make those judgments yourself and provide balanced evaluations. As a side note, I found this video unusually difficult to write. You end up dealing with things quite dispassionately. People getting laid off and you're evaluating how this impacts a game that you just like playing. Then you read a former developer's replies on Reddit and it snaps you into thinking as developers as people. They say job losses, but really it's people losses. It's not a loss of production. It's that people need to find new ways with how to deal with things in their lives, how to support their families. So especially now when developers are target of so much vitriol and anger over something that's meant to be a pastime and a love for so many, I'm going to try to remember that, like everyone, they're just people who are trying to do their best in the situation that they're in. And to that end, I'd like to encourage players, as Reddit says, to remember the human when it comes to interacting with developers still in the project, and in fact with developers working on any project. I remember a recent Twitter thread with devs from all over the industry talking about things that players never see or understand about games development, misconceptions or even things that they never could know. The one that sticks out for me was the comment that the team's best ideas never make it to the final game. that money or time or personnel, which is kind of like three ways of saying money in a sort of roundabout way, they get in the way of the best of the team. So when you're angry about weapon balance or wondering why something was apparently overlooked, perhaps it looks so simple to you, like it's obviously like a 10-minute fix and it could just be done. Well, just remember that it was probably time and money and not lack of care that made it turn out the way that it did. People get into the industry because they love games, and as I've said before, I've never talked to a developer who was apathetic about the experience of someone playing one of their titles. I wholly don't subscribe to the lazy developer stereotype. I don't know what happens to PlanetSide moving forward, but if we can remember the human a little with all of our interactions, then we can definitely make Araxis a better place to play and to work in. I'm very interested to know what you think of the recent news about PlanetSide, what you think about this video in general. Please leave a comment below right now. I'll of course be reading every single one of them. Thanks so much for watching this video. All your support is truly appreciated. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Take care.